Thank you very much for organizing this, for bringing me here. Usually there's always very different in many ways to start. So I will start multiple times probably. I was impressed how easy it was to change or how easy the collaboration was to change the space into moving. So the invitation also is for me to come a little closer, sit on the floor, or bring a chair, just to don't make this like too much of a, because I will not use the projection. I will use here real space, real things. The other maybe three beginnings. I'm sitting there and thinking like, oh, it's fantastic to be invited in this more academic circle, and then I saw the book, and I was like, wait, my work from Visible Undercurrent from 2014 is in a Routledge book too. I have to mention that, and even I have to write it into my CVs. It's not in my CV. So the book is from 2018, Performing Arts in Transition, Reconsidering Dance Histories, Negotiating the Now, Visible Undercurrent, New York, Berlin, 1990 to 2014.
Congratulations,
Peter. Yes, I have to mention that. The other is that really the school is so important that I was educated in the Netherlands in the early 1990s. It was really a school that invited artists, dance artists and choreographers, to teach their work, really. It's nothing much pedagogical, nothing much where does it come from, where does it lead. People came to teach their practices. And only after I finished the 4 years, I kind of understand, oh, this work has a history. And so I had to go by myself and with my colleague, especially with my colleague Esther Gall from Hungary, we would go to the library and we would find, oh, there was Yvonne Rainer, oh, there was, but this was after 4 years of dance education that was clearly inspired by this legacy, but it was never mentioned. It was never a topic. It was these people, they came, did their work, it was fantastic, or not. But that this whole baggage of the history of Judson and a little bit before and all like 10 years after was really something to be discovered by myself later. And why I say this also, we were just looking it up and taking things, and we did actually Trio A or portions of Trio A from the video just to experience it and then form it into more of a lecture performance. Because what I did with Esther was really quite particular. We would do improvised performances with costumes of the field already. That still everybody saw the man and the woman dancing together, the love and the not love, and we're doing something completely different. We're doing this and this and this, and we're dancing like this, and we're doing contact improvisation, and so we did a lecture performance before we show our work, and the audience was really changed. But one other aspect of this might come later. Another entrance that I wanted to, it's a little bit of a difficult subject, but I nevertheless have to say it, that since I was in Impulse Tanz last year for 4 weeks, taking a class on danceability, dancing, contact, improvisation with people with disability. I was there for 4 weeks, and I saw performances, and I had dinners, and then I was a little bit like, this one dinner I had, I was like, oh my God. I've been surrounded by Americans. I have all this American baggage, and like people in Berlin think I'm American. I'm not, I'm German. Everything I know about dance comes from this, and I really was like, I really have to make effort to decolonize myself. And at the same time, I'm here with all of that knowledge also. So it's a process. And I think maybe I have to dig a little bit deeper into my Czech family roots that I never really touched, but this is a future project.
Well, your second homeland, which is Poland.
Or Hungary with Esther, that we work together since 30 years. So, when I got this invitation about conservation of performances, I immediately came to a course I had developed for the university in Berlin, the Hochschulübergreifendes Zentrum Tanz, HZT, a dance education that is kind of new, past 10 years. And I called it Scores of and History of Scores since Judson. And I had brought a lot of books because this is my other love. I love collecting books. And I love to have books around me, so this is also why I brought some of the books. And usually it doesn't follow a certain pedagogy or something. I just pick a few, and also for here I didn't bring my whole library. I brought a few things that are telling about scores and meanings of scores. And then I usually give it to people to experiment with them or read a little bit further. So usually also in my artistic work, I overwhelm my performers usually with a lot of information, but I don't hint to you should work on this. If they ask me and I see something, I might, but it's not my purpose. I say, here, this is it. What is interesting you will see, and continue. So I'm very happy that we did the huddle again because it was on my list from the Handbook in Motion, which is a score that I read in this book, and we did huddle in all the teachings and the festivals we did in Hungary, the contact improvisation festivals in Hungary. We did huddle every year somewhere, and especially what I think the last little sentence in this version of the score is something that I share, and that is why it's also so nice to reconnect it to this. It is possible to multiply informally the huddle because she writes, this piece has also been formed in such a way that as it ended, each of the performers found 6 other people from the audience to get a second generation huddle going until 6 were happened simultaneously. So this multiplying is already in the score, and I love that I learned today that it is possible to keep doing it.
Can I say one little thing about that photograph?
Yes.
That photograph was taken in 1969 at NYU, and it looks like it's just a single huddle. But it's actually, it just isolated one of the many huddles that was taking place at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that photo?
It's in the Peter Moore archive, it's closed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
These archives that you don't get your hands on. Anyway, so the Handbook in Motion, we also agreed it is a really important book, lots of scores are in there, just grab it, do them, go to the streets and do them. That's what I'm often do. Another, of course, that hasn't been mentioned is Deborah Hay, and I will come to Steve Paxton later. But Deborah is, of course, quite known in preserving her pieces in prose. So, in prose, she would narrate her dances in writing. And that's imageries or body parts, or it's very eclectic, her ways of writing. And what I understand from these two early books when she started to write was that she was that video, to preserve her work on video, was too expensive at that time. So she didn't have the funds to get video and preserve what she's doing. And she tried lava notation, which didn't suffice her either in there. And that's when in '88 she decided I started writing my pieces in prose, which resulted then in her being able to put these pieces in this very famous solo commissioning projects, that she would give these scores to people that would work for 6 weeks together on that one solo, and then each person would sign a contract that they're able to perform that piece if they rehearse a certain amount daily before the performance. So, and it was quite happening for a long time that people really would pay money to take these courses and then be able to perform. In my time when I was doing Tanztage curation, I had multiple times that I programmed young dancers doing a Deborah Hay solo, because also they could really use their own costumes or change things in the timing, or they were all not, it was not prescribed in certain ways, but scores often prescribed in some ways, and in other ways you're free to do it as you want. So they were all slightly different. And then Deborah Hay's work shifted also dramatically when she started, because the solo commissioning project was everybody, non-trained dancers, older, younger, anybody could pay the money and take this course and do this dance. But Deborah's work really came back out again in a version when she started to work with people from the Forsyth Dance Company, and highly trained technical dancers would do the scores of Deborah, and that was also very exciting for her. Not only they could execute some of the images that she was proposing, but it was also a raising status when suddenly the dancers from the Forsyth Company would engage in a postmodern score all the time. And within that, also some other elements of technical tracking. She did lots of experiment with motion bank, where you would technically track and conserve in a way the movement, and even alter it from a computerized knowledge into a different artwork, like a translation from the dance being captured, being transformed into another artwork. And Deborah, there's multiple books now. One where she describes this transition is No Time to Fly. And in all of the books, there is also the libretto. So all of the books have a written section of the dance. And in this one here, that's called The Story of a Damn Lamb at the Altar. The piece was called Lamb, Lamb, Lamb. And it's printed in such a way that the bold print is actually the libretto for the piece. And the other prints are movement meditations of Deborah Hay that are recording the process, or remarks from the people who would perform. So also in the making of the book, it's also different layers within the book of Deborah Hay. I've seen many versions of it also especially this piece, I Sing For You. It's these 4 dancers, I'm not so sure, 4. And there is actually a version where Deborah is sitting in front of the screen of a recorded version of the dance, and Deborah is reading the libretto. So also these layerings are in this way then impossible, and it's a way of preserving. Then I'm very to actually have the slides of Steve Paxton from a piece that's called Jak vill la gonna telefonera by Steve Paxton, and it's a piece from 1964, which is the year I was born, and it's the year when Steve Paxton and Robert Rauschenberg were a couple. And I know this is also very true for Yvonne, that there was a time and they really loved to take sports images and take the postures from sports images and then put them in a row, and the dance would then be from one image to the next image to the next image to the next image. So the transition from these sports images became a dance and a phrase. And this is the original score for this piece, Jak vill la gonna telefonera, probably in Sweden. And I think Steve made slides of all of the scores that I have printed out, and I brought one of these prints that maybe can circulate, where it's just photos, cutouts from sports magazines or even newspapers, put into a random order, and then with arrows or dots or places he would indicate maybe a sequence, but then again,
That's the score.
that is one of the scores for that piece, into just coming from the image to the movement rather than from a kinesthetic sense of moving, which later, of course, contact improvisation became such a different world, with moving from sensation and reflexes and kind of not going into cerebral, but staying within the body, or even short-circuit the body's reflexes. But this has become a standard trademark for some artists to keep making work, and I'm also really quite happy to get my hands on this Remy Charlip reader. Charlip as a dancer, performer, but also maker and a drawer. Remy would draw a lot of things, and so Remy would not do photos, but he would actually draw dances. So this is a couple of dances where he would draw positions, kind of a famous a towel dance, like postures you can do with a towel, and then put an order as it is, or pick a random order and do the things. Another couple dance, or here, that's when I do these courses, this is one of the pieces that somebody really always wants to do, the mattress dance positions on a mattress in a bed that you could do. And for people who don't want to have the full body move, there's a fake dance that he drew that you can just do, or informally for your audience at home. But my all-time favorite, he calls them airmail dances, and they're actually pieces that he would send in postcards or in drawings to people, and here we can do that dance. one of my teachers, I say my guru, she doesn't like that, but I keep saying that, is Eva Kartek from Hungary, Australia, New York, now in the Netherlands. She has a postcard from Remy that this is a dance I give to you, you can perform it. But in this one, he is actually indicating direction, and so this is becoming a falling dance, and this is becoming an ascending dance. And this is a flying left dance. And this is a flying right dance. So one of my favorite scores from Remy.
Can you say a little bit about Remy's background? I know about him, but not.
I also don't really know specifics, but I danced with Cunningham and then made costumes a lot for Cunningham, and later did a lot of children's books after becoming an Alexander teacher, being very involved with idiokinetic body work. So a lot of my work that I do with Eva also in anatomical release, he would also paint a lot of anatomical release backgrounds. He's also a gay father for many people in San Francisco. Yeah, it's not in this one, but it's in one of the contact quarterlies that as he got older, he would do this. He would instruct people to do these spiral dances, sitting or lifting your shoulder dances. It's like really kept going on until his death in this physical engagement and with friends and sending stuff around. And here very beautiful children's books he made in his later life. Remy, still with the images and into this image work, of course, lends itself to visual arts and fine arts. There's this couple in Berlin, Bryn Skolam. I don't know if people know them. When I met them, they were also a real couple, but these things also change, so I don't know. But they would look into. Here's a nice. Let me find the original. They would look into imagery of fine arts. Of the canon of Manet, or even older pictures, and they would make their collection, and then interact these poses from their interaction into either photographs. So a lot of them are photographs, but I think the drawings are more of sketches, but the artwork then is photographs or performances. So again, here they would go from pose to pose and would indicate movement in between, and that would happen in a gallery. They would label themselves visual artists working with image making.
Is this a sequence? Is this a sequence, or is it one work or a sequence of images? I wonder whether this is,
This is photos of a sequence of images that they also took from film. So it's not only visual arts, and I think they collect them they sketch them in drawings, and again make their own distinction with it. But then really nicely making a book about it, which is then maybe also some kind of preservation.
But did they understand this as a score? Because the question is when the score becomes a score, right?
what is the thin line between the documentation of a sequence of choreography and when it becomes a score to be performed, right, later? I mean,
yeah, but I do think in these, when they make these moving images, then they make themselves a score and perform the score. I totally believe. I haven't talked to them about that.
I would also, I'm not suggesting this now, but it makes me curious to unpack this word that we use a lot, score, because it can mean many things and where it comes from. And yeah, not now, but it's bringing
Yeah.
because I know it's been used.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, everybody is like using it in all these different ways as an artist. Just to kind of follow the thread, there is, people might have seen Boris Chamatz would do with the same principle with the complete book of Merce Cunningham, 50 Years. And he would do it with his friends and just go page by page, like this, the shapes from this page, and the shape from the next page, and the shape from the next page, and it is performed actually with someone turning the page of the book. And then he kind of did that cool that he got former Cunningham dancers doing it while the Santa Fe and but also untrained dancers would do it. So it goes through a whole, through the whole iteration of what is possible with the score when you say we do the complete book from cover to cover in these poses. Then you have a piece that was acquired by many festivals. I saw it come out in many festivals, which is the same with yet another score book that I usually bring when I teach these compositional scores. That is a very intricate piece by Thomas Lehmann, a German choreographer, that I would entitle this kind of a masterpiece because he spent a lot of time figuring it out. And it has a very intricate time score, and it consists of 3 parts of 1-minute sections, and each minute has a score, a theme, something to do, and a kind of a prompt of something to do. It's a trio. The whole piece is a trio, and the indications is for each performer has a different scores, or it's done by all 3 performers. There is pauses between each 15-minute blocks. It's short pauses. And you can, at that time, it was made in the early 2000s, 2003 or 4. As a choreographer, you could buy the book, and you got a box of props, under which the space had a very distinct marking. Each minute has a very distinct place in the space, and a stopwatch, and I think t-shirts to put their names on. And so you could acquire this, and you would sign a contract that you would, in your hometown, make this piece happen with 3 performers. But you can only perform it when 3 versions come together. So you could not perform it, you could informally show it in your community, but if you would show it like in festivals, festival curators would have to invite 3 different versions of the same piece to show it. And so the 3 versions would be staggered. So a first version would do the first 15 minutes. The next 15 minutes, the first version would do the second, and the second group would do the first. Kind of a canon of these 3 versions of the same piece. And then at a certain moment there's 9 performers, and then there's 6, and then there's again 3. And the score is so minutely manufactured that it's composed in a way that at a certain moment all 9 dancers do the same thing, or and parts of the scores which I will just read a few, would be 1 minute explaining the piece, 1 minute I exist, 1 minute going into the future, 1 minute nothing, 1 minute fucking, 1 minute disco, 1 minute dance history. And so you would be quite free to interpret these things as you want, but you would have to stick to the time score, and then have also, and you always had one person doing the time. In this way, you could synchronize all of these performances. I have seen really quite some of these versions, because it was kind of a hype at a certain moment in this festival circuit to have Schreibstück. It's called Schreibstück, which means written piece. And you would see incredible versions how people interpret the things, and it was always a big party because it was 9 people, and they were all, oh, you're doing it like this, oh, you're doing it like this, oh, this is fucking, oh, yeah. So it had quite a life for a while.
A sect. I remember, like, the followers.
Yeah.
Thomas, he also was teaching a lot.
Yes, at that time he was teaching a lot. But then really it became a teaching tool for scores. And I must say, especially this one anecdote, bringing it to Poland, was really like, oh, I hate the strictness of the scores. Oh, this is it's conceptual work. It's really the beginning of 2000. Yeah, we all did conceptual dance. It's conceptual dance. And then Magda was really like, I don't want to do it, but I do it. I try the first 15 minutes. I try. And she was transformed into something that I want to do a Polish version. This is amazing. All these things you can see. Magda,
the one of the choreographers.
Yeah, so, and I hold it in this way, that it is really coming from the mind and constructing it in these scored ways, but through the transmission of a choreographer into a performance that is unique, and then mix it again with other unique voices. That was really quite a very nice thing for me to see. And it's for me a good example of a conserved idea of this is the piece, of course with the box, but then of course it can have many different iterations.
What's the logic of having them 3? Kind of, what was the reasoning behind? Does he want to have it comparatively done? Or why did he wish to have it?
I cannot speak for Thomas, but I know Thomas kind of well. We've been working together and dancing together in different companies. But I think one of the wishes that now I'm also even translating to myself in these times as an independent choreographer, independent maker, you would have not much resources. You would make solos, duos, trios. That's about what it is. And to understand group, or what a group of people can do, it's difficult to find funding for. And so I think this because honestly then to see a trio going through all 3 parts is also not so interesting. You know, this idea of growing and degrowing, this idea of having 9 people suddenly and then having again, there's also something in the number that there is an excitement in the number.
Doesn't it also intentionally reveal the methodology? I mean, that it's actually becoming really showing the differences, and, like underlying the differences, which is a part of the work actually, that each of the performers execute it differently. But if we would have only this piece done by one, many audience would just take it as a work, right? But when we have really people next to each other executing same score, what we actually perform is the practice of scoring and free interpretation, openness of the score is actually being revealed, and that's an exciting part. So to me, this is a very deliberate juxtaposition, very conscious of Thomas, to know that this will be only revealed when the different versions will be put next to each other. That, you know what I mean? So I have a feeling that that's been part of the conceptual thinking of Thomas. That he is revealing this.
Yeah, it completely makes sense. But I just also think that it's so thickly describing his work, so meticulous is Thomas, as Peter just said, you know. Then it's an interest, it's kind of almost questioning his own intentionality of being so, am I precise enough to give this instruction, you know, for the piece to differ in this one space and time. It's just interesting, you know, that he lets the things coexist in a way by questioning his own precise instructions. You know.
But at the same time, I mean, this is one of these things in that particular score is really these moments where you almost have this mathematic genius that in this moment everything comes together, because the scores have, let's say, the 7th minute in each of the things is the same.
I think he really choreographed in advance, I mean, how it's gonna look like. No matter what choices the performer will make, he knew exactly with this moment they will meet, or in this moment. So that's the precision. I think it's also an interesting tension between this conceptual and this also teaching desire to show conceptually freedom, and then this ego play is a play, no? So he actually gives people freedom, but at the end of the day, we all learn we are in a puppet in his theater, you know? Because if he is so rigidly deciding that this can be presented only that way, he actually still choreographs the piece, right? So, I mean, no matter my choices doesn't matter anymore, to be honest, as a performer within it, because whatever I do, the work is actually somewhere else. The work is being in the way how he decided ahead to put it together.
But can you allude to the work of, let's say, Cunningham, or even classical music, with those kind of structures where there's a freedom, but there is a precise consideration underneath it that will tie things together at a specific time? I mean, Cunningham, I'm not an expert on his work, but there were these chant procedures, you know, influenced by John Cage, influenced by, you know, Asian philosophy. So it's around, isn't it, in this way? It's like highly choreographed, very specific, but yet freedom and improvisation. So I'd be curious if Thomas sort of pulled from any of those previous traces.
Thomas was a student of the School for New Dance Development in Amsterdam, so he has that background, definitely.
I guess that's a larger thought too that's come up, is, you know, in Yvonne's work, you know, the claim to sort of innovation is there, but the realization is she's borrowing, stealing, influenced by so many lineages prior to her. So you couldn't have Trio Away without classical ballet, without Martha Brown, without John Cage. I mean, I think Judson knows everything to John Cage, really, and he often doesn't get even mentioned. So I think this kind of like ode to the ancestors often gets lost.
There's always a degree of changeability which is prescribed in the work, and he's kind of trying perhaps to, you know, to keep to the sameness of his ridiculous. It's just an ego trip, guys.
It's just his ego trip, we don't know.
That's what all dancers.
Sorry?
That's what all dancers, but it's just making it very
Exactly, yeah.
No, but I mean, I'm not a fan of conceptual dance from the times, especially when it's so much dictated from the head. But I understand this is for me an example where the minute works. It's the minute and it's also over. And then the next, there is something in it's going and it's flowing and there is humor in it, and I also am from that tribe that I really love that piece.
But it actually reminds me a lot about experiments, and jokes that Jérôme and Xavier Leroy were exercising, right? The one was performing and creating, the other one was claiming authorship. I mean, I think it's all beginning of 2000 when we started to question this notions of where is the work really situated? Where is the authorship? Who is doing what? And who's taking money for doing the work? So I think that's also, Thomas was exactly in the same time. Also Tino Segala, he's coming from this family, let's say. But I just wanted to point out to what Sarah just said, that that's actually exactly a difference between Yvonne Rainer and like Thomas Lehmann. Yvonne would always say openly, I stand on the arms of so many other people, where Thomas would never say that. Yeah.
Although I did ask Yvonne when she taught me the Kathakali move, I said, have you ever studied Kathakali? And she said, no, but I was in India once. And this is she made it in 1966, so also authorship appropriation now would be looked at in a different way. So I think, yes, she does give a lot of credit, but it's almost impossible to to get that detail, but where it comes from and the influence, yeah.
I usually bring a Contact Quarterly, which is a dance magazine that ran from 1975 until recently, maybe 4 years it stopped being in print, and it's just an incredible resource for writings about dance from a certain time and from a certain angle, maybe which started as a contact improvisation newsletter, but then became already invited a lot of other materials in. Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen would publish her first BMC articles in the magazine. Simone is everywhere in that magazine. And oftentimes I pick one up because I'm looking for something, and then I see, oh wait, I actually was looking for Keith Hennessy's piece that he made in San Francisco, but I found a total transcript of another performance that is transcribed here with all the text and all the actions, and an interview with Anna Halpern about her 3 decades of innovation in dance.
Can you say a little bit
Animating the news.
Can you say a little bit about Anna Halpern, because she's so crucial, maybe people don't know,
Yeah, but no, it's true. I mean, it was a little bit what I said before, that it looks like we're going back and back and back, and then we cannot talk about all of this work without mentioning Anna Halpern. And especially there's one researcher, she wrote this...
Dennis Ross.
No, I think she's from Australia. She wrote this book on experiments in the 50s and 60s. And she really claims Anna Halpern and Simone as this kind of innovators that actually worked in these dance communities, but influenced a lot of visual artists. And
Sarah Brandeis and book.
Yes. Anna Halpern is dead. But she lived a long life. She got 102. I'm also not an expert. I have all her books and I read them. I'm not an expert on that. Working a lot on premises on healing, on energy work, on practices, on somatics, on improvisation. I mean, it's said that Simone and Trisha went to Anna Halpern's dance deck in California to do classes in improvisation, especially in the nature and embodying qualities of dancing, embodying rhythms of nature. It's a really long line of work within using a lot of the therapeutic essences, moving in and out of the art essences. And it's worth to dig into Anna Halpern in this respect. And she, of course, when we talk about scores, she has this cycle that she is scoring. She gives a score, the action is done, and then there is a value action that's done, and then the score is redone. So it's a cycle. I think she calls it the RSVP cycle. Also worth to look into deeper. But I did at the end find Keith Hennessy's work with, it's called Split Your Way to the Holy Land, Saliva, a performance piece by Keith Hennessy. And why I picked this in one of my early workshops that I was teaching, I'm teaching, when I bring this material, I'm teaching, I wouldn't say, maybe it's more reinvention. So I give this text as a text. It's a critic. Rachel Kaplan wrote about this performance, what she saw, what she experienced, what is happening, and out from the text, a student of mine would recreate the piece, and it was a really extremely stunning experience to reenact or recreate a piece from a text about the piece.
It's interesting because it's already such a secondary testimony, no? And then actually what we do really reconstruct, and reenact when we are trying to really create something from somebody's testimony. Maybe it's a totally different thing, no?
That's very interesting, but are not also conservation documentations? We have many conservators here, so I just want to bring it back again home. No conservation documentation, all these conservation narratives in these terms also not such reflections or interpretation on the work, no? Well, it's an interesting thing to actually think comparatively about, no?
Yeah, at the same time already by giving someone that magazine and saying, see what you find, and why do you pick the queer activist from San Francisco over Simon's news animation is already a statement. But I also find these juxtapositions really funny, that the news animation and then you have Simone and then half naked, or fully naked actually, you can see the next page. It's just nice. And what Contact Quarterly does, I think you can still get the back issues. And when I got mine, the issues that were out of print, they would just photocopy and bind. Now I think even the ones that are not in print anymore, they will digitally copy and reproduce, and they look almost like the original. But there's something sweet about this photocopy version also, because the content stays the content. And I do like to work with magazines often rather than books, because there's a different timeline with magazines. The book is really, you take a lot of work, a lot of time, is it into print? Into print is really something, it becomes something. And magazines are a little bit more, it's for now, we put a few things together, we print it, and it's for now. It has a date, and the next one will come in a month or in half a year, so there is something in magazines that hold another rhythmicality or hold another maybe freedom to not fix it, but fix it enough to have it printed.
It's interesting document of times, no?
Yes.
Time.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so I was actually happy to find I did actually find it in Berlin in a bookstore, New York feminist magazine, and usually they're small. Usually they're kind of small booklets, but the Dance and Dancing one is this big one, and that's what jumped also on me, that the size of it really is like, they must hold dance important. And among a lot of discussions on feminist dancing, there's also quite some scores in the book, and they're highlighted in a different print. So this is Effie Bowen, a young choreographer from New York, wrote this for to be practiced and performed, and for sentimental reasons that we studied. Yvonne Meyer was one of the people who would be my teacher. She's a Skinner releasing practitioner, but very soon moved into very simple movement prompts that would be, she would call them scores, but it was just a movement prompt of being drunk on high heels as a goal, or grasshopper on a hot plate. Go. And so Yvonne Meyer is full of this wait. She's Swiss. She was just here. So yeah, I mean, I know her as a New York choreographer, but she's actually Swiss, Yvonne Meyer.
It's because you're American.
Yeah, these moments I can turn around and be somebody else. I'm an artist. Camouflage.
What year are we talking about? This instructions. What year?
Which year?
I mean, this magazine is not so long ago.
I mean, Yvonne Meyer's short instructions.
2017. I mean, I studied with her in the early 90s, and there is videos of her online from that time, maybe a little later, maybe a little bit earlier, especially together with Jennifer Monson, like as a duo. Very explosive, incredible dancing that actually we used some of this in this early work in 2014. We used some of Jennifer Monson choreography. But I imagine she has written this one for the magazine then in 2000, it was printed, the magazine is from 2017, so around the time, maybe a little bit before. I guess it's commissioned, but I'm not sure. But this one would read, bring a bottle of water, close your eyes and have your fingers whisper across your face. Begin to move with a heavy limp, your arms stretched out, looking for another person. Whisper your fingers across that person's face, then whisper your first childhood memory into that person's ear. Open your eyes and go find your bottle of water. Begin to run and trip while opening the bottle. Finally, end up tripping all the way onto the floor as you land the open bottle safely on it. Grab the bottle between your chin and your shoulders and move the bottle to a safe place. Find another body and melt with it into the floor, in despair. On the floor, push each other away in disgust. Begin a floppy roll towards the wall. Put your feet against the wall, laying down with your eyes closed. Listen to the building with your feet. Get up and dance the info you received for 2 minutes. Close your eyes again and with shy mouse noises, find and touch at least 2 partners. Begin a bumpy dance that grows into full fun brawl, grabbing and manipulating each other with pleasure. Help each other fold into the floor. On the floor, perform a slow motion and complicated somersault. Jump up to standing. Your spine is possessed by a crazy rhythm. Then send your loose limbs flying through space. Your hands, feet, and head get electrocuted when they touch the imaginary ceiling. You end up on the floor doing a puddle of oil dance. Slowly you get blown up like a balloon, ending in an obscene sculpture. The end. So, before I maybe talk a little bit about my recent work with focusing on Mary Overley, on the work of Mary Overley, I thought to give you a chance to just engage with one of them, to just for a few minutes grab one and maybe try something out of these scores. And then we can come back together and talk a little bit more or ask questions. So whatever is interesting for you, and then maybe if you read, it's only one book, you make a snapshot of one of the dances of Remy and go lie down. If you want, no pressure, but to just come closer and touch some of that material and start your own little research or questions already here. She and her struggle, I would rather think working towards not even a completion, but giving it value through being further articulated. That's maybe my wish, because I know her. She sent me drafts. She sent me, we're having a relationship, or we had a relationship before her death. But yeah, it's not reenacting, because she made pieces, but and she talks about one or two or three in the book, but it's more the system, like getting to know the system, teaching it to the performers I work with who then perform it. And the book is really, I believe it's not a finished, it's not a finished, this is the first printing. Nobody wanted to print it. She printed it in self-print, and it has flaws, and it has misprints, and some things are not matching, and there's earlier versions of the book that is very different. So I don't know if I take it on or if it will be a PhD research of sort to actually, I don't know, clean it up, but editing it in a way that it is easier to transmit, because some of it is very cryptic. It's because she was very cryptic.
It's also very interesting. We already talked several times about added value or adding value. So one staging work in the museum seems like adding value immediately, right? And canonizing the work and formalizing it, as Megan was talking. And then there is this just being busy with bringing into the light certain practices, already adding value or justify them but also printing a book is very much adding value, because there are many people, especially if they're not very professional or writers themselves, they do approach books as canonic knowledge that has been printed. So it's very interesting to me, and I just think loudly about what to do with the fact that the book is self-printed by artists, and you even notice there are flaws in it. So it's also an interesting document of a certain time, but it can be treated accidentally or intentionally by somebody else as the thing. So I don't know how to get over it.
But maybe there is value in that, isn't there? I get sort of nervous when we start to say that these value places, the book, the museum, and I think what Megan was also kind of talking about is when the work sits in those places in a particular way, but then also that sort of fear of moving away from the value of the, how to say, you know, the beautifully flawed human body, self, lived experience, knowledge, value, all of that we're fighting for all the time. These are just different spaces, but I have a concern sometimes that those spaces get more weight because they're more sort of acceptable in terms of the, you know, the value. But yet in the, you know, we spent a lifetime, you know, arguing for the value of embodied experience and dance as a practice, as in its own terms. Yeah, something I'm taking away of really thinking about that today.
The book is also the body, no? It becomes the body, like something tangible, something tactile.
But it's still a book.
Yeah. Yeah. But also I have a self-reflection generally about it, that also how wounded a community we are, that we need always look for looking for a value, adding value to our work through different means. No? Like, you know what I mean? That it's almost like a written in the history of what we are doing, is that we need to always look for value, because we don't.
But I think in terms of the archive and sort of the conservation question, there is also a value in letting something decay, or the loss of, or not archiving it, not conserving it, not keeping it, and placing value on that loss as having a value as well. I'm just speaking more generally. You know, I don't know, Megan, if you have dance want to be in a museum, and partly because of exposure and critical thinking and its value. I go to museums much more to see dance and I do theater. It's interesting, and but yet not wanting that to be the only place where it finds value, or the main place. Yeah.
But it's interesting, perhaps I can also pick up on Joanna, and Joanna, correct me if I mislead you better, but it's very interesting to think those, say, less object-based, although it's already almost complicating what I wanted to say, but say ephemeral art forms, to not to try to limit that to the only act, right? And I think this is what you were saying, that, you know, a book produced for or by a performer, or by a choreographer, or by someone who conveys knowledge about this, is actually also, you know, just a note. If we take seriously, maybe, you know, what we also discussed in relation to Maynard and George's situation. If we take seriously that there is no original, right? That the work actually exists not only in this multiplicity of acts, but also in the multiplicity of the material culture, right? That's perhaps not even surrounds it, but that is inherent to it. Then, you know, we have quite a richness, actually. And it's interesting that, you know, we are coming from, or several of us are coming from conservation, right? So it's interesting that we learn through the museological and institutional discourse about preserving performance, and we have to actually unlearn it in order to, you know, step out. So actually taking an entirely different perspective to see that communities of practice have been preserving this stuff for, you know, for times immemorial, actually, and that acts or events, you know, also were inherent to rituals of different religious orders that were enacted, you know, over millennia. So it's a very interesting kind of thing to open it up a little bit more, and not to circulate, you know, only around the event, which quite often those museological actually discourses.
Yeah, it's interesting about Yvonne's book, Works, that she wrote a book about her work, and I think she really claims agency around that, of not leaving it to critics or someone else, and then her book, Feelings or Facts, kind of having her say before. I think she saw that as a place of agency, to be able to write about the work and write about her life. I don't know if Simone's written any autobiographical information, or...
I mean, Hamburg in Motion is the main one, but she's produced a bunch of books.
Yeah. Then there's the say of the artist, not left to someone else.
I am particularly also thinking now about what Peter was mentioning, that somebody has recreated something from a testimony of an audience member. because I mean, it's my favorite topic, is like what we really document and what we really reconstruct truly, right? If there is so many performances, as many people in the audience, right? So then it's almost like the work does not belong anymore to an artist. There is so many works of art, you know. So this is also the beauty of it, and a kind of a pondering area is what we really what we are able really to grasp through archiving and for preservation, you know, and conservation. So it's very interesting to me. It opens up totally different perspectives on. This is why I was asking whether you are reactivating Mary's work, because we will talk about it later with Declan and Katja. Yeah, what does it really mean? Reenact, restage, recreate, reactivate. And activation is actually having in its core an assumption that there was something that was working and now needs to be put again into working. So then what was working is more impact-oriented thinking in preservation, right?
Yeah, I'm putting this into working.
Exactly. That what?
I'm putting this into working.
Again.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you are, I mean, I would say you reactivate, no? Something that was working, something that was having an impact, something that was steering creation.